Hello, everybody. I am here today with a live interview, The Power of the Pause. Thank you for joining us. We are right now streaming to the Make Life Delicious community as well as the Goodness Multiplied page. And today we have about a 20-minute interview. And my name is Tina Hong. For those of you who don't know me, I'm an executive health coach. And I work with busy professionals, leaders in businesses in midlife who want to make life more delicious, lose weight, feel great by reprogramming their mindset, habits, and better nutrition. And I have declared February as the month of love. And this week we have some amazing interviews lined up, including today I have a very special guest, the author and leadership coach, Rachael, the author of Power of Pause. And one of the reasons why I wanted to bring Rachael on for this chat was because I know this pandemic has highlighted some of the challenges and brought up a lot of questions about how we've been doing things in the past. And for many, it really has changed the paradigm of our purpose, our efforts, our daily efforts, and our priorities in business, in our jobs, in our families, in our relationships. And with distractions down to a minimum over this pandemic time, there is no place to hide. And during this unusual time, it's like putting a magnifying glass on, some aspects of our life that we may be reevaluating. And so I know that Rachael has an amazing story. And before I get into the Q&A, I wanted to just introduce Rachael. Welcome, Rachael, for joining us today. A little bit about Rachael. She is a leadership coach who empowers professionals to learn and build the emotional intelligence skills to thrive at work and beyond. And for the past 12 years, Rachael's experience in sales and client service at Google has helped her to have a pulse on what it takes to be successful and what it takes to be a transformational leader. Her book, The Pause, was named one of 2017's top business books for your career and was featured in the New York Times, Wall Street Journal, and on the TEDx stage in 2019. So, Rachael, yay! Looks like you're muted now. Yeah, okay. Thank you so much for joining me and joining our audience. Yeah.
Thank you, and what a lovely introduction. I feel like all of that has been said, and every time I hear it, I'm like, wow, like that's what I did. That's cool.
It is cool, and you are cool. And not only are you cool and just like have such a tremendous background and experience and so gifted in many ways as a leader yourself, I think you're just a great person and you're truly, truly heart-centered in the work that you do. So that means so much to me in terms of collaborators and people who I associate with. So I really appreciate you being here. So is there anything you wanted to start before I start the Q&A?
Well, I'm excited to speak to your audience because I do think, first of all, when you say make life delicious, all I want to say is me. Like I want that. So it's an honor to be here, and I think people who are in touch with their health, in tune with how to make things better, or want the best for themselves, are always, to me, I think, individuals who are, I think, just like so interested to reach their potential and like aspire to more. And I've studied a lot of different disciplines in the transformational arena, and ultimately, like, why would you not want to do that? Like, why would you not want the best health possible? Why would you not want to eat the healthiest things to live your best life? And I always go back to that.
Right.
It's harder, but it's worth it.
Right.
So I think your audience is so aligned with that.
Yeah. And it's not just about the food that we have on our plate, but it's really nourishment off the plate. And I talk about on and off the plate all the time. And I know that you know, in working on your book, you studied a lot of neuroscience, and I would love to hear more about that and what you can share in terms of your book. So tell us, Rachael, like, how did you become an expert on the topic of the power of pause? And if you have a personal story, like, how did it change your life, and what was the pivot point?
Yeah, well, I can give you a little bit of a background there. Go back 10 years, basically. 2011, I was working in a role at Google, managing a team. And for whatever reason, I felt like I could never get it right. I was getting feedback. I wasn't communicating effectively. I wasn't having executive presence, and I felt like a failure. And no matter what I did, no matter what I tried, maybe many of you can relate. I couldn't, nothing could get any better. And so I felt like I was in this spin cycle. And now looking back, I realized I wasn't present. I wasn't aware of how I felt. I wasn't expressing fully so I could be clearer. And I literally was just stuffing stuff down and like muscling through everything because I was either thinking about what I needed to change, like being in the future, or being in the past, like stuck in like what I should have, could have, would have done. And ultimately like missing the entire present moment all the time. And so that is how we burn out. And talk about nourishment. It's probably like the most starvation type technique you can give yourself in terms of feeling nourished. And I didn't know that at the time. I didn't have any training or any background in mindfulness or wellness or neuroscience or anything. But I ended up taking this 3-month unpaid break. And at the time, you know, I just realized I couldn't keep doing what I was doing. I just had to figure out something had to change because I just couldn't continue in the way I was feeling, that imposter syndrome, and just like, maybe I'm not supposed to be here. Like maybe this is a mistake. And it wasn't for lack of trying, probably like you and many others. I was a very high achiever in many ways. I got an MBA. I lived in New York for 10 years. I was a national rowing champion 5 times. Like it wasn't for a lack of trying. Right. And so that's kind of where I came to was, wow, like I don't have to change what I'm doing. It's just, I'm not aligned right now. Mm-hmm. And that's what ended up happening. I ended up going into a role back at Google, but in aligning with my strengths. And I looked at that. And then I started studying emotional and social intelligence at the Wright Foundation. And from there started learning about all the things that I really wasn't aware of, like, oh, I could express how I'm feeling. Like I actually just feel really sad and scared. Oh, wow. Well, maybe I should be paying attention to that as opposed to ignoring that or not even tuning in. And that's a skill, by the way. It's not like we learn how to do that. It's actually something we can all learn, but I don't think anyone's really taught that. I know I wasn't. So the importance is to try to align with what matters. And so here we are, fast forward 10 years later, I'm still at Google. I'm still in that role that I chose that was aligned. And now I help others because I've learned so much. I figure I can't be the only one who was basically burned out, and learned a couple things along the way. And so that's a little bit about how I started out in this world. And the book Pause is my story of that. It's called Harnessing the Life-Changing Power of Giving Yourself a Break, Pause. And it covers that, but it covers a lot of the tools that I've learned since to be more aligned and self-aware.
Yeah, that's amazing. So you're still at Google. So you've been there for a total of many years now.
Yeah, I've been there 13 years.
Wow. Okay. So 13 years. So since you wrote your book and came to this realization, like, how is it now? Like, is your role different, or like your outlook different in terms of your job?
Yeah. So what's interesting is my job hasn't changed. I still manage clients. I work on the same team. I've had like different managers and different teammates and things like that. But what has changed is the how, like, how do I do it? And my scope, which is now not just my core role. It's like volunteering as a coach at Google. It's creating my own program on the side, which is like a year-long program for women to thrive and succeed and lead. And so I think what I think about in that terms is all of us have our own roles in the world that we live in. It's about how do we think about it? Like, what's the quality of the experience for me? Like, can I show up more fully? Can I be more in touch with how I am in the moment? Like, to know if I am feeling tired, to get up and take a break, or if I'm feeling really productive, to keep going, but also get that nourishment from others and myself to keep going and feel even better and a bit more productive. And so that's the key difference, is it's the how, which is different.
I remember being in corporate for many years at various, roles. But my last corporate job, I just remember the back-to-back meetings where I'm like, are you kidding me? I don't even have a pee break. And the whole mentality and the momentum of having to have those meetings back to back, literally with no breaks. And also the whole dynamics as being a woman, a managerial woman in corporate. And I know Google's pretty open-minded, and they're very liberal, and they're very, innovative in their workplace environment. But, what would you say? I mean, did you experience any of that at any point in terms of, because I know that is a common theme across all corporations, where women are working in corporate in director level managerial jobs. And, it's a tough grind in the sense that they have to feel, some women have to feel like they have to level up to a certain degree. And there's all this additional pressure just being a feminine leader. Do you have any thoughts about that, Rachael?
I mean, I think what you're saying really resonates. And so there's so many layers to that too. So think about just the back-to-back meetings, no matter what your gender is. It's also like a pandemic right now. Most of us are working from home. And if we're not, we have extra added pressure that we put on ourselves. And we also feel, whether it's feeding our kids or taking care of our own health, or juggling the work-life balance that's now both really, really murky in terms of delineation.
Right.
So that's going on. And then as a feminine leader, like someone who's in a corporate environment, I think there's like different angles of that, where we feel more pressure sometimes to say yes, right? Like, these are about boundaries and limitations. It's not necessarily every woman, but it's in general, and in our culture and in a system, women tend to take on more yeses and responsibilities. Plus, there's the home aspect of that, and that's not everybody, but that's what we've come into for now. So it's really up to us, like every individual person and female leader, to say, to put a stake in the ground and say, this is not okay anymore. So what am I going to do that's different? And then, does that mean I need to rearrange my schedule, or just say no, like I cannot take this on right now? Or does it mean I'm willing to shift things around so that I can make it work for me, but other things might have to fall off? And it comes down to prioritizing, like, what are those top priorities for you? Because I hear that all the time as well. And it's not new to me. Like, I feel that as well, but thinking I don't have enough time, or all the excuses we come up with in our heads. And the idea is no one has finite resources of time, but yet there are people that do really well in that. So what is their secret? How do they do that? And the idea is that they create and prioritize what's needed, and they're very clear about it.
Right.
So that's what we need to learn as women, as leaders, as our own authors of our lives. And so that's what I think pausing is. It's an intentional shift in behavior. It doesn't mean I go out and kick up my feet and watch Netflix for 2 hours, although it can, but it needs to be intentional. It needs to be about, how does this restore me, get me out of that fight or flight zone, and potentially feel nourishing. Maybe I'm taking a risk that I wouldn't have done otherwise, like saying no,
right,
or explaining why this matters to me and being vulnerable. All of those things I think are really important for us now in 2021, and where we need to go, because the old system is very, I want to say, broken. It just doesn't work anymore, especially now with 24/7 and our always on culture, as my husband likes to say, our ASAP culture.
Yes, exactly. And so it leads me to this, the concept of your book is really about raising our emotional intelligence. So can you talk a little bit about what are some key like tenets or principles in your book that you share regarding emotion? What is emotional intelligence? Like, is that something that you can, you know, like bone up on a skill doing?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. Well, so that's a great place to start is what is emotional intelligence? And we hear this all the time, like EI or EQ. It's a buzzword right now. And it's actually only been around about 25 years as a phrase and as an actual science. Daniel Goleman, who wrote a book called Emotional Intelligence, came out in 1996. And now it's the #1 leadership skill that recruiters look for talent. And so what it really is, and this is a definition that I think kind of is a broad-based term, but it's really the ability to have the capacity to know how you feel. So that's the self-awareness, and be in relationship with others to handle those interpersonal relationships while being with yourself. And then that kind of spills out into social awareness and relationship management. But ultimately it starts with you. So back to my story, like my crazy story of burning out. I had no idea I felt scared. I had no idea I felt sad. I know I cried a lot, but I didn't know why, and I didn't understand the connection. And if I had known, oh wow, I'm just like really tired and I need a rest, or I need to be heard. Like I don't feel like anyone gets what I'm trying to do here. My sense is I wouldn't have needed a long break. I would have probably been okay to course correct way earlier. And so that's the value of emotional intelligence. And to me, pausing is the gateway to that. It's like the first step. So it might be taking a breath, just to take like a big inhale. Maybe one of my favorite pauses is to put a hand on my belly and just take a big breath. You can do this with me if you want. Inhaling, holding it if you can, and then slowly exhaling it. Feeling my stomach collapse a little bit. Do it on your heart as well. Yeah. And so there, like that's a pause, but that just gives me that potential space to say, how am I doing?
Yeah.
Instead of go, go, go. And it doesn't need to be long. It doesn't need to be any price. It doesn't need to be costly. Wow. And it's not tied to any activity. It's about your awareness. And that's, to me, how pausing is tied in with emotional intelligence, and like they work together. And I don't think you can be one or the other without that moment of or the moments of just checking in.
Yes. And, you know, that's kind of one of the aspects of my coaching program and helping people through weight loss, significant weight loss, where most business owners or busy professionals are really not tuned in to how they really feel. So when you hit that moment of like burnout, like it affected you physically and emotionally. Did you actually have a panic attack, or did you have any severe symptoms at that time, Rachael?
Yeah, well, it's funny because like I don't think I did, and like I said, I had no training at all.
Yeah.
In any awareness stuff, like no meditation, no mental training. I literally took like an MBA, and that was it. Like that's what I know. Finance. So no, I don't think so. But I just remember a lot of like late night sobbing and feeling exhausted all the time, and not feeling good, like dreading, like every day going into work thinking this day will be different. Like I'm ready. I'm gonna like show them what I got. I'm gonna be great. Like I'm gonna like, get accolades. And then I like the same thing would happen like again and again. It was like Groundhog Day. Yeah. And so it wasn't for lack of trying, but I didn't like for what I look at now, my system was broken. Like the Rachael system, like me, wasn't working. Like I wasn't getting a feedback loop of how I was doing. I'd cut it off, or I just like muscled through it. And I think none of us were taught to check in and like be in our own emotions, especially women. I think we're told to like check your feelings at the door, especially in like the 80s, 90s, 2000s growing up. It's like, that's not how we do business. And then now we're kind of coming into this space, I think, that's more of a like egalitarian society where men and women are co-leading, and the feminine and values are actually mattering, like creativity or input and collaboration. And it's not just like this driven linear thinking, which is we need both. We need both to be successful. And we're finally like bringing these skills up that are so important. And that's what I consider pause for me. But at the time, yeah, like none of us are that. And burnout's the number one issue of like healthcare hospital bills. It's 190 billion US dollars annually, which leads to things like type 2 diabetes and high cholesterol and even like heart disease, premature death before the age of 45. Like it's no joke.
Exactly.
And it's the fastest growing ailment we have. And so we need to do something about it. It is an epidemic and we can change it. That's my whole TEDx talk is like, we don't have to think it's inevitable, but it requires us to change, getting support, getting a mentor, learning about what could be different, because it's just not what we know. And we need others to change ourselves, because all we know is what's in our own minds and our heads, like I did. I had to get a mentor.
Yeah. Yeah. And, you know, it's so helpful to have a mentor and a guide to bring that objectivity and to bring the right questions to the table so that you can really investigate and explore do a little more deeper exploration on what's happening and really understand. And so I completely agree. Like, yeah, stress is the number one killer. It's not those primary diseases, right? Which of the American public is really struggling with: heart disease, cancer, diabetes, or more. You know, there's metabolic syndrome starts with stress. And it completely changes your physiology, not just in terms of your brain science, but your physical science. It changes everything. And that's a key component of a lot of the health coaching programs that I do in working with executives, because they become so numbed out on hitting their goals, hitting their targets, having to achieve. And before you know it, you know, you don't want to get to the point where it's too late. And that's truly where my passion is. It's don't get to the point where it's too late and it's harder to turn around. So I love this. So tell us, like, you know, as a leadership coach, who do you help now and how do you help people?
Yeah. And just like a note on what you were saying, like I just was really resonating with thinking like you just got to keep going. And the thing is, it's no one's fault. Like it's just it's like, I do a lot of systems theory and like it's the system, but we can also take ourselves into like, well, what can I do? Like, what's my part and how can I change it? So that's where we can start. And so because I learned so much on my journey, I realized I want to help other people. I cannot be the only person here who has burned out in like a high tech. I was, you know, at Google, but it could be any role. It could be anything you do. So now I really hone in and help. I help like men and women, but I have a program that helps women who are struggling with overwhelm, who want to reclaim their lives. And that's who I primarily work with. But I also work with men on one-on-one coaching. And there's no shortage of what you can learn in this area. And that's the good news is even if you start with one thing, even, and it really comes down to our beliefs that we have about ourselves, our unconscious beliefs. I work a lot with that, and knowing they can change. It just takes our courage to shine a light on that and say like, hey, like, yeah, what isn't working? And am I willing to think about things differently, do things differently?
Yeah. I love that, Rachel. And so, yeah, I agree. And one of the most powerful things that I tell people, I tell my clients and in my groups and one-on-one is practice the art of silence. Practice. How many people wake up in the morning and they immediately turn on the news, immediately are on their phones, immediately listening to podcasts? I mean, they're tuned in all day long. And the power of silence is so important to really listen for what you need, what your body needs physically, and what you emotionally. Yeah. So that I love that. I completely align with that. And I'm sure in your book, Pause, there are a lot of there's not only a lot of science behind it that you talk about, but also some strategies on how to do that, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, that's what pausing is the ability to intentionally shift your behavior, which might just mean to be in silence. Power of silence is a huge leadership skill, I think.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So just like practicing that over and over, just holding silence, 10 seconds. It's hard. But you
Yeah.
got to start somewhere, and that's a great way to go.
Yeah, and it's finding, you can listen for so much more. You're able to have so much more capacity when you create that space of silence, right?
Yeah.
So what's the most important thing that corporate warriors need to know who are like climbing that corporate ladder, even though in the midst of pandemic it's still happening, right? So what would you advise of them right now that in those leadership positions that are, gunning for those promotions, really trying to get those accolades, meeting those sales numbers, what would you advise them?
Yeah, and like unfortunately, there's no magic bullet. I don't have the silver bullet here, and I hear a lot about this internally at Google. Everyone wants promoted. Everyone wants the next ladder rung, and the reality is, there's an X percentage of people, like very small amount, versus everyone else who's still doing great. I mean, everyone at Google is like super smart and does a lot of really amazing things all the time. So it's not about the external. I would say I look at it like the external things that sound and are aspiring to be. So like those goals of promotion or getting a raise or new title or all of that. It's about looking internally and saying, and like, what will satisfy me? Like, where will I be satisfied? And am I and ask yourself, am I striving? Like, am I striving for this goal because it's there, or am I really being purposeful in what I want to do and in it for myself? And if we look at that, to me, like that's a lot of my training is leading a purposeful life. And if I'm just chasing stuff because it sounds good or what I've been told, and this is what I learned in my world, was it wasn't my goals. It was other people's goals that were placed on me. I realized I didn't have to live my life in a box like that. And I don't think any of us do. If you truly want a promotion or whatever it is that on your achievement list, and it feels really purposeful, like this is the next step in my 10-year plan or my 2-year plan of where I want to go, then awesome. Like, go for it. That's purpose. That's purposeful living. But if it's there just because you're getting told that and you think you should do it, I would ask yourself, well, what is the why in this for me? Like, why is this important to me? And just keep going into that. Well, why is that important? And it's like, well, I want to get more money. And it's like, well, why do I want more money? Well, I want to achieve the things in life that I really want. Well, why do I want to achieve the things in life I really want? Well, I want to be happy. So you really just want to be happy. Oh, well, then there's probably other ways to do that. So there's like many more things to talk about, but pausing to me is, I think, that first step of like just evaluation and a non-objective way of like, what's going on here? And then achieving things, but making it meaningful for you can be a big game changer. And it's not going to burn you out. It'll actually feed you, as opposed to going after things because you think you should, or that you're told that you should, but you're not connected to it in a purposeful way.
Well, that's awesome, Rachael. Yeah, that is so awesome. That's great advice. So, so I'm wondering, there's a lot of people watching who will be watching the replays on this and stuff. If you could let everybody know how they can reach out to you and learn more about your work.
Yeah, thanks, Tina. And hello to all of you watching. Just love that you're here and would love to see who this is. I know I shared this as well in my world and my channels. So I have a free blueprint. I invite anyone to check it out. It's called The 3 Keys to Turn Overwhelm into Thriving. And you can go find it at my website, rachaelomera.com/blueprint. So it's rachaelomera.com/blueprint. And what you can do is you just fill out give me your first name and email, and I'll send that document to you. It's a great PDF. And it covers burnout. It covers the 3 keys that I think are so important, including the 5 primary emotions, which we haven't even talked about, which can be a big game changer in terms of like knowing and labeling how you feel in the moment so that you can be a little less triggered.
That's the next interview. That's the next talk, right? I will put that link in the chat for those of people who are listening to the replay, but I would take advantage of that, everyone. And thank you so much, Rachael, for your time and your generosity and sharing your story and your gift of the blueprint. And
thank you.
Yeah. So back to work, right?
That's right. I got like 4 more meetings here. And actually my one tip I want to share, because you mentioned this, like going from back to back to back meetings, and like, that's my life. I mean, that's like 99% of the world right now. We need to take those breaks. And a hot tip is, if, you know, we need, like, they don't need to be long, but even if you have 30 seconds, if you can look out the window or like refocus your gaze, and you got to make it conscious, because otherwise it won't register. You won't change your neuroplasticity, but you can be like, okay, I'm taking a break right now. This is me taking 3 conscious breaths. 1, and then 2, and then 3, and then you click the meeting on, but you give yourself that time. And research shows that when we do that throughout our day, we do feel more vibrant. We don't feel as drained, and we can use that as energy going forward to propel us into that next meeting. And it actually can make a huge difference. So I invite you all to try it.
That is awesome, Rachel. That is so awesome. Yeah, when we do that, we're giving ourselves an intentional break, and that's powerful. So,
power of pause.
Yeah, awesome. So thank you so much for joining us on your lunch break, and so grateful for you, Rachel. So those of you who was able to join us today on the replay, my name is Tina Hong. I'm an executive health coach and lifestyle nutrition. I work with busy professionals, CEOs of households, and leaders in business to make life more delicious. Thank you so much, Rachel, for being with me today. And
you're welcome. Thank you.
If any replay participants have any questions, please put it into the comments, and Rachel and I will find it and we will respond to you. So would love to have your questions or comments. Thank you so much. Really appreciate your time, Rachel. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.